Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm really grateful to be here. I've been to the first two Creative Mornings programs here in Calgary, and I got to say that it doesn't really feel that different being on this side of the podium. Like the manifesto says, we're all creative, and I'm just happy to have an opportunity to share what I do creatively with this group. Very grateful for you sharing your morning with me here this morning. So, like Steve said, name's Ken. I work for Heavy, and everyone here in Calgary has seen our work. Folks that maybe will see this online in 10 years from now, the video that we put together. If you've been shopping in Singapore, you've maybe seen our work. If you watch the NFL on Sunday morning, you've maybe seen our work. If you've been to Tate Modern in London, you've maybe seen our work. If you bought a handbag in LA or New York, you've maybe seen our work. So we are a local company here in Calgary, but we've done projects all over the world. So my agenda is as follows. We're going to start out by talking about some of the local weird that we've done. I'm going to follow that up with some of the faraway weird, and then we're going to finish it off with perhaps the weirdest of all. So, local weird. The big head, everyone knows this one, everyone loves this one. I'll go quickly. Glacier Skywalk out near Jasper, also kind of weird. It's a glass bottom observation deck. A boardroom, it looks like a bird's nest in an art gallery here in town. Has anyone been to the new National Music Center? Maybe seen the sculptural ceiling that we put up above the theater there. Really beautiful, also weird. A whole bunch of quartz, a sculpture at a rec center. Weird. Some targets for a condo downtown. A weird take on curling, I suppose. A big anchor, very weird. Some horses, also kind of weird, I would suppose. Polar bears, Chinook Mall, if anyone shops there over Christmas, you've seen some of our weird work there. Transit Story, this is a great project kind of down by the big head. Weird paint job and a weird effect is created by that. In terms of far away weird, we did a big banana. It's holding a bird. This is in the banana belt of Manitoba. Beautifully weird. Gumhead, one of the weirder ones that I've been involved in. It's basically a huge head, Doug Copeland's head, and folks chew their gum and stick it to it. It's traveling the world right now collecting gum. Kind of weird. This is a weird church project down in the States. There's a bird there, and so that kind of gives it's a big weird project. To Return to Christ, a big beaver. It's kind of weird, I suppose. A truck that's kind of like a spaceship, a weird truck. I love this one. It kind of reminds me of Beetlejuice's pants. Weird paint job. Big bird, kind of weird in Vancouver. In Oakland, this is a weird wall that we built. It's got a weird paint and then weird lighting on it as well. Big tomato on a chair, kind of weird. One of my favorite projects, translucent fiberglass with weird lighting that comes in. And then we did a head for Avicii, and it's kind of weird, especially when the head breaks apart and flies over the crowd at certain parts of the set. So that's some of the far away weird that we've been involved in, and Steve referenced it. We got a summary of kind of the weird stuff that we build. Steve referenced it. Maybe the weirdest of all. I think folks will know this one. So, by a show of hands, who here loves this job? Who here loves this project? One love. Who here hates this project? A few more. Now, love and hate are kind of the same thing. It's evocative of some sort of response. Who's indifferent about this project? A few. Yeah, okay. So the lovers, the haters, I'm just happy because that means it worked. Like if you love it or if you hate it, it worked. If you're indifferent about it, my goal here is to show you kind of the creative process that would have gone into it, the creativity that would have been applied to the fabrication of it, and I hope at the end of this, maybe we've got a few more people that are no longer indifferent and maybe have an opinion on the work. So I mean, this is famous. It's really changed a lot of things. It's been talked about around the world. It's been a case study of what goes well. It's been a case study of what goes poorly. It's changed policy. We're very proud to be a part of it. My summary of this is that it's a really clever solution to a really challenging site. And make no mistake, like if you read the comments on the Sun, you know, my kid could have done that. What a waste. You know, these guys didn't even try. That is absolutely not true. The artist group that brought this to us, Ingasidi, as far as I'm aware, they're the best in the world. They are overwhelmingly creative, and I hope I can share a bit of their process with you this morning. So, clever solution to a challenging site. What do we got? We've essentially, like conceptually, we've got a whole bunch of different forms of communication that are all, or not communication, rather, transportation that are all coming together on this site. We've got the Deerfoot Trail, which is over there. We've got an overpass for vehicular traffic. This is CN rail lines. There's regional pathways for bikers and joggers and things like that. There is there's the creek there, which is also a form of movement, and then the airport. You know, thousands of people that are flying into town every day, and airplanes can also see this. So, at the time that this art call came out, the requirement was that the art had to be incorporated into the actual capital project that was going up. So they're building the overpass, they're building the bridges, and the project has to be built into that. So it can't be on the grass beside, it can't be at a different part of town. It's got to be built into the actual structure, into what's getting built at the site. The site is challenging because you've got all these different speeds, you've got all these different distances, you've got all these different perspectives, whether you're up in the air, whether you're on the Deerfoot, whether you're in a train, whether you're riding past on a bicycle. There's all sorts of different perspectives and different speeds. So a challenging site, to say the least. And what we arrived at was a fairly clever solution. There it is. I mean, again, like what do you see when you see that? You see, well, obviously a big circle. That's the prominent feature, but you also see kind of the street lights or the antenna. What makes this an interesting site is that we've got the regional pathway, but then we've also got the street lights that are required as a part of the bridge, you know, equal distance spacing. What we did was we removed one of the street lights and then replaced it with a new street light, unlike anything you've ever seen before. Instead of it being a whole bunch of sticks, it's now a whole bunch of sticks with a circle in the middle and then a whole bunch more sticks. The light standard up at the top has remained. And if we look at the circle, if we look at the amount of transportation, the different forms of transportation that are happening around the site, the circle is like the ultimate metaphor for transportation, because it's the wheel and it's the building block of all of human progress and also all human transportation. The fact that we've got the street light, the antenna up on top, that anchors it into place. So the anchoring of it into place, of it being a street light, with the metaphor of the wheel, which is in constant motion, is almost like the metaphor of the bridge, because we've got a permanent piece of infrastructure, but then it's just accommodating movement and movement and movement and the passage of vehicles. So there's kind of this interesting tension that happens in that way. Furthermore, I think the concept is really interesting because, I mean, what are the antennae on top? Is it evocative of a butterfly's little antenna? Is it evocative of maybe a bicycle handle? Is it like, one of those old bicycles, like one of the first ones that was developed with a huge wheel? It's almost a caricature. The project is interesting from a bunch of different angles. And does anyone know what this might have to do with the project? If you're going to guess that it was about 100,000 of those, you would be close to correct. But what this actually was the original concept that we had for the space. So originally when we were looking at it, remember the artwork had to be incorporated into the bridge, and this was kind of what the artist group from Germany had started with. So we were going to essentially do these big birds along the edge of the guardrails, And I mean, that's kind of cool. But when we're talking about scale and we're talking about speed and we're talking about all the different user groups of this, if we had done this project, nobody on Deerfoot ever would have seen this. It never would have made the newspaper. It would have suffered the bane of indifference because nobody ever would have heard about it. All these hundreds of thousands of people that are driving past every day wouldn't have gotten, riled up about it, and it wouldn't have turned into anything. This would work very, very well in the Beltline. This would work well on 17th Ave. This would work well downtown where you could walk up to it and be like, oh man, look at the detail of the feathers, or look at this amazing paint job. But when you're zipping past at 80 or 100 kilometers an hour or flying overhead, you would never see it, you would never experience it. So scrap this idea because despite the fact that it's kind of cool, it wasn't necessarily suitable for the site. So next, we kind of looked at, okay, we need to have scale, we need to have presence, we need to be able to see this from a long ways away, but this kind of bloom, it doesn't really mean anything. One of the most important parts of, in my opinion, of public art is that it's always, it always it always relates to the site somehow, so the context of the site or the context of the history of the city that it's being in. So, naturally we're in Calgary, strong Western heritage. We evolved into maybe more of like a horse or a tack type of motif. And this was going to be kind of cool because we were going to be able to achieve this amazing amount of scale and then do kind of a stylized representation of a horse. We were playing with different ways of making the same sculpture interesting from different speeds, different angles, different perspectives. And then, at some point in the process kind of just arrived at this thought like, maybe Calgary doesn't need another horse, or maybe it doesn't need another piece of Western art. And eventually, this kind of shape, this horse shape, was simplified into this shape, essentially. I guess when I screenshot it, I left the cursor on there, so that's kind of interesting. But so what we're looking at is I believe, a really, really powerful concept. It's a metaphor for transportation. It is a metaphor for, it's a caricature with the way that with the antenna make it almost look like a person. It's also got a fairly cinematic quality about it. So when you're driving up to it, depending on the angle that you're at, when you're driving up to it, it's almost like a bar in the distance, and it's no different than any other street light other than the fact it's symmetrical at the top. But then as you're driving past it, it has the ability to open up. So again, kind of playing off of this, I'll just pop back. Again, playing off this, this metaphor for motion and transportation within like a static, fixed object. In between Nenshi saying that it was awful and Nenshi saying that it was terrible, he said that it was an engineering feat. And so we'll go with that. What is it about this that makes it an engineering feat? And this is where I come in and where I'm really proud, because you're always going to get weirdos like me that are going to inspect welds and look at details and things like that of how stuff actually gets built. But the magnitude of what we actually built here is pretty remarkable in itself. So a street light, it's not like we could make a shorter street light than every other street light that's on the site. So you're dealing with like a 60-foot tall structure to begin with. And in order to make a 60-foot tall circle, if you know your pi r squared, you're dealing with like 180, 200 feet of material, somewhere in there. When you're bending that material, the way that these bending machines work, you would have a straight member and then you would bend it like that, and you would get the radius, the very specific radius that you need in the middle, but then you've got these really, really long leads. So in order to make a circle that's accurate over 180, 200 feet of distance, the degree of precision that you need to have so that by the time you get all the way around to the other side, the two ends line up. Like that's no small feat in itself. You can see the scale of some of these members. The scale of the actual footprint. It's not like we could build this in a shop and then roll it down Deerfoot and then install it in one piece. It had to be brought to site in multiple little pieces that would then get very, very precisely oriented on site, welded together, and again, no small feat there. Actually, I'll pop back to this one. This connection detail Again, it doesn't feel like much, but next time you're at like a rave or whatever, borrow the girl's hula hoop and hold on to that hula hoop with your fist, and see like how much strength and how hard you have to grip that hula hoop in order for this thing to stay upright. What's really interesting about the shape of the circle is that, so you've got this little tiny touch point down at the bottom, and then the amount of weight that's directly over top of your foundation is very, very minuscule. But then when we got a 60-foot circle, we go out 30 feet this way, we go out 30 feet this way, and that's where the majority of our weight is. So we've got this small little foundation at the bottom, but the majority of the engineering forces that are working on this thing are up to 30 feet cantilevered off of either side of the footing as well. So to make it stand up straight, to make it accurate, to make it work, is kind of a weird project. When else in the history of the economy would you ever need to do that? When else? It's not like a house or a bridge or like an oil rig or something like that where you're building it every day. This truly is a one-off, and you can get a sense of the scale that these welders are working at in this photo. The craning it into place was no small feat either. It was kind of a weird job for the cranes. You can see that we had to have one holding the bottom and then one holding the top, and then they sort of had to shimmy it out so that they could get the piece, upright and vertical over top of the foundation without dragging it across and posing a huge, risk to safety and things like that. And I guess that's the final piece. So it's a strong concept. It's a beautiful piece. It was very, very hard to build, and depending on the sight line where you see it from, it is truly remarkable. I love this one because you can see everything that's going on. It gives this bridge identity. We're not dealing with the Golden Gate Bridge here or Lions Gate Bridge in Vancouver or any one of a number of bridges that mark a town. Like, we've got a fairly nondescript overpass in a nondescript part of town in the suburbs for all intents and purposes, and all of a sudden we've got this universal simple symbol that gives that bridge an identity. It has the ability to frame downtown, the planes, trains, and automobiles that will interact with it. Really beautiful job, and overwhelmingly proud to be a part of it. And that's it. What do you folks think? Have we got a response now? Is it any of the indifferences? We love it or hate it now?
I feel like you can actually talk about it.
You can actually talk about it now. Yeah, that's good. It's more than a circle. I mean, you'd see a circle on Mars, or you'd see a circle. Like, it wouldn't be weird at all to visit an alien planet and there to be a sculpture of a circle. It's such a universally simple but metaphorically strong thing. Yeah, that's great.
Has this piece received the most response out of anything you've done, or?
Yeah, for sure it has. For sure it has. Yeah, and maybe unveiling a sculpture during like a mayoral campaign isn't super strong timing, but who knows? Maybe that's what made it awesome. There's been some really positive change and some really positive conversations that have come out of this. So maybe the timing was perfect. But you know what? It worked. Like $500,000 or $470 or whatever it was. Like, we do probably 5 of those projects a year. 5 city-sponsored projects of that budget every single year in Calgary, approximately, give or take. And how many other ones have we talked about, or how many other ones would folks be able to identify? Or maybe you got your friends coming in from Edmonton and you can say, hey, did you see that thing? So I think it worked. It's evoked a response. Yeah.
When you said it's changed policy, what policy has it changed?
What made this site so challenging is that the money had to be spent on in the actual infrastructure of the site, and that's the biggest thing. Changing it so there's a little bit more flexibility of the infrastructure project and where the money's spent, and then part and parcel with that, more opportunities for the public to be engaged in the process and to voice their opinion. I don't necessarily think that's a great idea. I really believe in subject matter experts, and I would rather have a subject matter expert make the decision for me based on their training and their experience, as opposed to maybe your typical Calgary Sun reader having as much of a say as somebody that knows what they're talking about. But yeah, that would be the 2 big things. Yeah. Yeah.
How long did it take for the creative process to come up with this result? What's the time frame?
Oh, I don't think it would be super long. It would probably be in the neighborhood of like maybe 3 to 6 months. The creative process is excellent, but it's a little bit different with the sculpture of this magnitude than maybe a canvas or something more graphical, because there's the idea, but then there's also the implementation of the idea. As it relates to this particular sculpture, there weren't really that many opportunities for a ton of flexibility. It has to be as tall as it is for the concept to work. The street lights have to be the same height as every other street light. We have to use the same kind of cobra head street light. So then when you're getting a 60-foot diameter circle, the engineering then takes a big part of that. So the creative process, maybe the idea doesn't take a lot, but then the actual implementation or the realization of the idea is where a lot of the horsepower goes. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions?
Did you pitch the idea?
It's kind of a collaborative process. So my business, we don't really get super involved in the creativity. We will hire artists, or we will partner with artists or other architects, design professionals, and we will help with the pitch from this can actually get built point of view. So for this project, I mean, we've probably done about a dozen projects worldwide with these artists. And this was our first time doing one in Calgary. We've been to Singapore, we've been to Germany, we've been to Toronto and Vancouver and Edmonton and everywhere else. And it's finally, yeah, we're going to do one here in town. And then it was this response. So that was kind of ironic, I guess. But when it first presented it, it is a very, very strong idea. And the artists that bring it are best in the world. So it went over exceptionally well. And I think a lot of people were maybe a little bit floored that, like, it's just so simple, that it can have that many layers of meaning to it. So it went over I would say very well. And it was a winner. It was 60 people probably applied. I think 3 groups were shortlisted, and then this was the winner. So, I mean, it was an open and transparent, thorough process to arrive at this, yeah.
You said the process has changed since this, but the committee to approve, to shortlist the artists and then approve the art itself, how did that look? Like, what was that committee made up of? Who was represented?
I don't know the exact makeup of it, but it's usually a design professional, so an architect or a landscape architect or someone like that. It would be an arts professional, so probably an artist or a galleryist or an art consultant of some sort. Business representatives, city representatives, and then the small, or not small, city or citizen type representatives. So it's usually a panel of 5 that would actually make the decision, and for that panel to be successful, they've got to come from a variety of backgrounds. Yeah.
Okay. Does it have to be unanimous?
I'm not completely sure if it has to be unanimous or not, but there is an obvious winner for sure coming out of that process. Yeah.
How do you end up landing all these weird projects? Like, do people come to you, or are you continually seeking out cutting edge?
It would be a bit of both. Like Manask Isaac, the sponsor of this event, for example, they are an architect. They do beautiful, interesting work. We would approach groups like that and say, hey, you guys do cool work. We do cool work. We should do cool work together, or weird work. I should be plugging that word a little bit more. So there's a decent amount of it that is, would be approaching folks like that, especially locally. Internationally, people see this, or people see the Wonderland sculpture, or any one of a number of pieces around the world. And to be honest, there can't be more than maybe 10 groups that would be operating at the level that we're operating at, technology speaking and process-wise around the world. So there's projects like this that are popping up all over the world, but maybe only 10 of magnitude that would be able to accommodate that. So, yeah.
We have time for one more question. There's got to be one more.
doing its Twitter profile?
That's a mystery.
See
Yeah.
if there's a Twitter for it?
Yeah, there's a Twitter and there's a Facebook, and it's kind of got a mind of its own. And there's like, what was interesting, because we figured it was somebody working at Heavy that was doing it. So we were kind of like, at the coffee pot, you think it's him or whatever? And but one thing like that Facebook thing kind of showed me was a new perspective, because at first I like got my nose up that Nenshi would throw the project under the bus. But then whoever wrote the Facebook thing was like, hey, I think it's kind of cool that we've got a mayor that doesn't necessarily blindly support everything the city does and will say that it sucks because he thinks it sucks. So at first I was upset, and then I was like, stupid Facebook unknown profile, like making me see another perspective. So, and now I don't really know what I think of Nenshi's response to it. I think so I think that Facebook or the anonymity there plays an important part of just the total story of what this project is. So, yeah. Awesome. Yeah, thanks guys very much.